18th century English women are commonly depicted today as decorative or as waiting for marriage. In terms of commerce, we usually see them as consumers of luxury goods. The British Museum holds thousands of ornate commercial advertisements engraved in the 18th century, known as trade cards. And these show that women manufactured and sold luxury goods, as well as buying them. This exhibition has identified the trade cards of 75 women with businesses in the Cheapside area, which was the heart of luxury shopping in the city.
This is where this exhibition and the whole story started, really, with these trade cards of three sisters who were all fan makers. Esther's was opposite the old Jewry in the Poultry, quite near the east end of Cheapside. Martha, her sister, was on the north side of St Paul's churchyard, and Mary, who married a man called John Sampson, was next door to the Nag's Head Tavern in Cheapside.
Esther Sleepe and her sisters manufactured fans in a workshop and sold them both retail and wholesale. They may also have exported fans to Europe and to the English colonies. Fans were made for a very wide variety of occasions in the 18th century.
We've got, this is also related to St James's Park. It's the building that was erected for the firework display at the Peace of Aix-la-Chapelle at the end of the 7 Years' War. And this was a famous firework display, as you can see, and the Handel's firework music was written for that display. Unfortunately, the building burnt down, the fireworks went wrong, but it's a rather marvellous fan. And then this one, much more delicate, but luckily in good condition, is made in 1788, and it shows the King's Theatre, the arrangement of the auditorium with all the boxes and who owned which box, who had the right to sit in which box.
Cheapside gets its name not because anything for sale here was inexpensive, but because cheap was the Anglo-Saxon word for market. So Cheapside was the main shopping street for the medieval and early modern city of London. The big difference between the luxury shops that are here today and those that were there in the 18th century is that the goods that were sold in the shops in the 18th century were actually made above the shops. The shops were on the ground floor, then there was living quarters for the people who ran the shops, possibly for apprentices, and then at the top were the workshops where the goods were actually made. The Sleepe sisters were trained in fan making by their mother, but since their father was a member of the musicians' company, so were they. Other women were formally apprenticed in a company or guild, like Susanna Passavant or Jane Cox, who was apprenticed to Elizabeth Hutt. Hutt was an upholsterer in partnership with her son, and she took 5 apprentices in the Clothworkers' Company. Around 1740, both female and male apprentices. One of these, John Iliff, succeeded her at this address in 1760, and his card proclaims him successor to Mrs. Elizabeth Hutt. When a businesswoman married, she did not necessarily stop trading. So Esther Sleepe simply had her trade card reprinted with her new name of Esther Burney. She is very unusual among these traders in having had a miniature portrait painted, so we actually know what she looked like. In the portrait we saw earlier, Louisa Courtauld is dressed in silver because she was a silversmith. Women operating highly capitalized trades were not unusual in the 18th century. The principal bar to entering business was the training and the setup costs rather than the sex. And there is evidence that London trade families expected women to be actively involved in family business. Just like men, women operating a business in the city had to hold the freedom of the city, and their membership of a company or guild was formally recorded. Here, Mary Owen recorded her goldsmith's mark with the London Assay Office in 1738. She ran her business as a widow at the sign of the Wheat Sheaf for nearly 2 decades.
If you look at the archives, before the 19th century, women played an active role in businesses around Cheapside and in livery companies such as the goldsmiths. But here in the archives of the Goldsmiths Company, we can see that around 1800 that stopped. And it wasn't until 200 years later that the first woman was readmitted again to the company. In the 20th century, we saw more women emerging in the trades, the goldsmith's trade, for example, linked to the arts and crafts movement. One of these women was Joyce Himsworth, who studied at Sheffield School of Art. She was a pioneer, and the company's collection holds 7 pieces by her. A letter from her remains in the company's archives, dated the 22nd of July, 1945. She asked that whatever plans are made to assist craftsmen, exactly the same may apply to craftswomen.
Because the 18th century history is unknown, in the later 20th century, many of the companies thought that they were admitting women for the first time. Although in the 18th century women were involved in the guilds and companies, they were not involved in the governance of those companies or the governance of the city.
Yes, I'm one of the aldermen of the City of London, and we're part of the governing body of this wonderful square mile behind me of the ancient city. The aldermen have existed for 900 years. The first woman to join the Court of Aldermen was in the 1970s, and she went on to be the first female Lord Mayor, Dame Mary Donaldson. She was Lord Mayor in 1982. Unfortunately, after her, there was a great big gap until I came along. In 2002, I was the second alderman, and we had the second female Lord Mayor as well in 2013. And now we have 4 female aldermen on the Court of Aldermen. So that's 4 out of 25, which needs to be better, but it's not bad. Well, it's just uncovered something that I don't think many of us knew about, because we'd all have thought that business and commerce was dominated by men all those years. And so it's fantastic to know these stories of these women who were in their own right owners, entrepreneurs, business women who ploughed their furrow of making sure that people came to them, were very commercial, I think, in the way that I've seen some of the documents you've shown us. So it's really important that we see that they were taking part in the commercial city at the time. There's nothing to bar them from actually being part of the business city that made the UK and London such a great entrepreneurial capital.
These forgotten women entrepreneurs of the 18th century suggest that power can as easily be lost as it is gained, and that there is nothing inevitable about progress towards gender equality.